Coming up on today's episode of Technoid, I'm going to break down WWDC once again. As my final time I'll be talking about it. I'll explain everything that I liked, things that I didn't like, and also I'm going to call out the elephant in the room and ask the question to all Apple users, why are y'all giving Apple a pass? Like, I'm not even joking, you'll see what I mean in this video. And also, the iPhone 12 rumors have already started up again. However, this time there is some good news coming, which means more value and more proposition for your dollar. All of that on today's episode, so stay tuned. What's happening, everybody? Michael here. Welcome back to Technoid. Now, guys, as you know, I've been doing countless videos of WWDC. I've did my live stream on Twitter, which I advise you guys please follow my Twitter. I'll be doing that more often if we get more followers. I did my after show. I did a bunch of live streams. Now I'm back behind the camera, ready to give you the news. So, without further ado, let's get it going. So, first story up, we're going to take this entire beginning part of the story to talk about WWDC. Now, unfortunately, I don't have my iPad with me. However, got my handy smartphone, or Blue's Clues says our handy dandy notebook. Okay, yeah, I'm really that old. But I'm gonna break down everything that I forgot to cover yesterday and give you a little bit more detail on WWDC. I'll explain what I thought of the event and everything. So for starters, I gotta say right off the bat, Apple nailed the event. That was some of the best production work that I have seen come out of Apple. And because it was held not in front of an audience, giving them more freedom and range to not only do what they want to do, but also allows them to expand and make more creative decisions. And this event, to me, was the best camera work that I have ever seen from Apple. So Apple, great event. That was truly a great event. Samsung, you better be watching. All right, but enough of that. The event as itself was very good. In my live stream, I really liked the fact that Apple felt like the old days. This was kind of an event where it was true to its word, software. But without further ado, let's kick it off. So the first software they talked about was iOS 14. Now, first thing right off the bat, I was very disappointed that they did not address the bugs. I thought they would have addressed it and said, okay, iOS 13 was okay, but it didn't go the way we thought it was, but we're gonna redo that. They didn't address any issues with bugs. They didn't talk about performance. They didn't talk about any of that, and I was a little disappointed in that. But with that said, though, there were a lot of positives that came out of this event. So for starters, the experience. You could now add widgets on your home screen. You now have app view preview, so if you're watching a movie or something, if you swipe out, the movie will follow suit on your phone, and you can do whatever you want. Now again, a lot of these features have been on Android, so the fact that Apple has now decided to play catch up and started finally implementing them does feel nice that now iOS users can finally experience what Android users have been experiencing for a while. So that's one. Number two, the app library is another helpful tool. Instead of having multiple pages, you could just swipe up and down and look for a folder, and helps to organize what you need. My favorite thing about this whole thing is the experience. When it comes down to the compact calling, or the app switcher, or the video player, I like the fact that it feels polished and smooth. That's one thing I will give Apple. When they do something, they do it nice and polished, so I'll give it that. Next thing they did was picture-in-picture. So now when you FaceTime, you could do it on the iPad, but you couldn't do it on the iPhone. Well, now you can now do that. You can now swipe out of FaceTime, and you can finally make a call. Now, it's cool that Apple is making it more minimal and easier to use, and I really like the fact that they're doing this. They've also updated messaging, where now you can pin important combos at the top of the phone, so you can click on what's important. They've revamped the group FaceTime feature and also group messages, also allowing you with message in reply, so you don't have to clutter and make too much messages, things like that. And it has a lot more group photos and other things like that. So iMessage is finally no longer crappy. Good job, Apple. Great job on that. Next thing up is Maps. Now, Maps, to me, Apple did a full 360 on this whole past year, and this year they're going to keep it up by now adding cycling detection. They will also help planning your trip if you have an electric car, and also with the charging stations. Also, taken into consideration, they also unveiled the car key feature that it will implement. You have Siri translations. It has basically the things that I had talked about in my software experience. Then Siri. Siri has an all-new UI interface, more minimal, less obscure. It also has a nicer design. It now is 20 times more factual by allowing her to bring up web answers, finally. and also sending audio messages. And then they discuss a little bit more about the Home app, making it similar to what Amazon Alexa does when it has sensors when you're leaving a house and coming back. So I like the fact that Apple really is taking the initiative to put more features. I like the fact that there are a lot of features. The last thing with iOS 14, the thing that you should really be most excited about is the third-party default. Now for this, third-party default is the main emphasis. Everybody is going crazy. Now you can switch your web browser from Safari to Google Chrome, or your music player from Apple Music to Spotify, to Pandora, Tidal, whatever you use. You can now switch it, even your mailing apps. So I really like that Apple is now finally opening up the platform, and now you can finally choose what you want, the consumer. So I'm really happy that Apple is doing this with iOS 14. I am a little bit disappointed that they did not talk about the bugs. They spent more time talking about the features when they should have addressed the bugs and their plans to get rid of the bugs. But that's iOS 14. That's just some of the main things that you should definitely be expected and happy for when you get the update. Next thing is iPadOS. Now iPadOS, I'm not going to focus too heavily on because a lot of the features are going to carry over. However, this time they have implemented more features with the Apple Pencil. When you draw a symbol or make markups, they will be professionally fixed for your choosing. You can access more apps in a single view, copy and paste handwritten notes to text. You can also write in any text field and scribble. iPadOS will also implement the minimal design and will have the nice feature of using the iOS 14 minimal call design. So I really like that feature as well. It's very useful. And Siri also gets its revamp on the corner of the iPad. Very nice, Apple. I really like that. Next up, watchOS. Now watchOS for me, I didn't really pay too much attention, but I noticed it did say you can now customize watch faces. You can now decide to customize what you want to do. You can meet your sleep app, which means now you can track how long you sleep. Thank God they finally put that in. You can now add new workouts, new things it will sense based off of your wrist, and of course, healthier habits like the hand washing feature. Now again, these are just some of the things in watchOS. I'm giving you basically the overview of what are the major things. But watchOS 7 to me, watchOS is really the best OS for a wearable. So I'm not gonna shame watchOS. I think that's the best. I wish it would be workable with Android. They would feature an app, but to each his own. And the Galaxy Watch Active 2 for me works perfectly with Samsung. Next up, tvOS. Now they didn't talk about tvOS in major or bring it up as one of the major platforms, but it's interesting to note that they put the HomePod in because there's a few things you people missed, and I want to point it out. Number one, HomePod runs on tvOS software as its platform. Number two, tvOS will get camera sensors, will get third-party accessories, basically the same thing. However, those features also carry over to the HomePod, and now the HomePod can access Spotify or Apple Music or anything with default browsers. So all of the Siri features, everything from its AI intelligence down to the nitty-gritty, finally carries over to the HomePod. Now the HomePod, to me, is finally smart enough. The fact that it will give you web answers, it will give you third-party accessories, even though it's still technically locked into the Apple ecosystem, it still, to me, has finally reached its full capability. So let's pray to God that it does well this time. So Apple, good job on the HomePod area. I'm glad that you did that. But back to tvOS, it will help with switching users easier. It will make it much more easier. And most of all with tvOS, it will integrate a lot better with the Home app. Now, Apple spent a whole few minutes talking about privacy and security of data, so I encourage you guys to actually check that out yourselves because I don't really remember it too much, but I will leave a link to Apple's privacy updates that they have done, implementing in the app, etc. But one thing important to note is in the App Store, they will be featuring data privacy things. They will let you know as a disclaimer before you install the app, so that's really nice that Apple did that. And the last one, the main one, the one that everybody's been buzzing about, macOS. Now, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I'm going to be 100% honest. That name is so goddamn funny. macOS Big Sur. Oh my god, like I swear, when they announced that name, when Craig Federighi said Big Sur, I could not stop laughing. Like, when you think Big Sur, you're like, big man, like what? Listen, I get they're basing it off of California, and I understand, but come on, Big Sur. Come on, if you didn't get any laugh when they said that, I think you're living in a bubble, I'm just saying. But all names aside, this is again another big update for the Mac because they are redesigning the macOS experience from the ground up. It will be 10.16, but it will finally be a revamp. This reminds me of the old iPhone, the old macOS that we all love. The 3D design, the schematic kind of viewing, the whole new arc of the web browser feeling like a refresh. And I like it a lot. It feels so much newer looking at it, and it looks so much nicer. It has all of the controls and things on iOS coming over to macOS, a lot more of a desktop experience. The whole thing just feels revamped, and I love it. I think macOS finally has become more simple and easier for me anyway after watching it, because I use macOS on a daily. I like it, but it could have been a little bit more easier for me. Now it is perfect. I think this is the best macOS that I have seen in a while. But that name... I'm sorry, I've been laughing every time I think about it. But that's not the major thing. The major news, the one that made everybody go crazy, is the switch to silicone tips. Is a major positive. Not only is the Mac finally going to be in-house built CPUs, ARM-based of course, but also this will be the new era of the Mac. Now I have been vocal for months and months saying that the ARM-based CPUs for the Mac would be the best thing that Apple can do. First of all, their iPhones and iPads have so much power in them. Whether or not they're able to tap into them is questionable. But by allowing the Mac to run on your own CPUs and having their own performances, it allows for not only your own in-house software and hardware working together, but now you can fully control how to optimize the experience for users. Now, of course, there is question of thermal cooling, heat sink, all that stuff, but the main thing is Apple is working on this. Now, they expect to start the process by the end of this year. It will be a 2-year transition where they will allow users to start making the switch. They're having developers work on ARM-based programs like Final Cut Pro, Movie Editor, things like that. So when you get the new Mac, it will work on day one. So it is a 2-year process, so I'll probably think about it in 2 years. But that's WWDC. Now, overall, before I call out what I'm about to say, let me just say, as an Apple fan, a person who has used both Android and iOS, as a real original Apple fan, being back meaning the days of the black MacBook and also the original iPhone, a younger kid version, and iPod Nano and things like that, this truly brought back the fan feeling in me. This made me love Apple again, because this was truly them delivering, and this was them truly getting their act together and finally being somewhat of a catch-up, but also it felt nice, and also it felt so much better. We didn't have to hear those stupid people go woo 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 woo. Like seriously, they're the most useless woos for the most useless news that they ever announce. I'm just saying it. But I have to call out a lot of Apple YouTubers because this is a problem that I'm having. Y'all are giving Apple way too many passes, and you're acting like this should have been done now rather than sooner. Here's the truth. While I am happy that iOS users are getting this, I am super happy that they get to finally customize the app and customize everything. This should have been done years ago. Because as an Android user now, I've seen so many things that Apple still haven't done. Always on display. Certain things, little areas like customization with battery, RAM, things. There are still areas that they still have not caught up. And the fact that everybody is praising and praising and praising, and they're not afraid to say, hold on, time out. Why wasn't this done sooner? Listen, I get Apple wants to fail behind closed doors so they don't make a mistake, but here's something that I learned a long time ago, not just in my life, but in the game of life, period. Only the risk takers are the ones that are willing to do the things that most people aren't willing to do. By you being able to take a risk and going all in on it, even if it fails and you get back up, you are the one that's forefronting. Take a look at Samsung. They released the foldable. They took a risk. It failed. They came back to their senses and said, we need to work on this. They re-released it. Less problems happened. Now they are starting to release a whole line of foldables. But that wouldn't have been happening if they didn't take the risk and go through with it. Apple does not take risks. They do risks behind the doors, which is very, very fine. That's very good, so it doesn't happen to the public. But these little things, like these updates, these little features should have been done years ago. I don't understand what it took Apple so long to do this, and the fact that these YouTubers are just giving them passes. Like, stop trying to validate their failures. Just admit that Apple should have done this sooner and be happy that users are getting this. Because even though I think you should be calling them out, I still, on the other hand, say I'm happy that the users can finally experience a nice addition to iOS or iPadOS or anything. But stop trying to give Apple passes and call them out on the crap that they should have been done sooner. Be willing to take risks, be willing to deliver for the consumers, but most of all, be willing to do the unthinkable. That's where I take away. Apple doesn't do that, and they should, because if they did that more often, I think we would be having better conversations of Apple actually innovating. The only innovation I saw yesterday was them switching to the ARM-based processors, and that's my opinion. Now listen, even with all my complaints and even with this, I still like the event. Again, it made me feel like a fan, and I truly enjoyed it. Now again, everything that I'm saying here is my opinion. So if you don't agree with it or you see it in a different way, that's fine. I'm just letting you know how I see it as a consumer, as a user, and most of all, as someone who has used both. So I'm not being Android biased, and I'm not being iOS biased. I'm just giving it to you from me using both. That's all I'm saying. And quickly before I end the video, I did mention iPhone 12 will be having a better performance. Well, according to the newest rumors, it looks like the iPhone 12 is going to have a 120Hz display, the Pro model to be exact, and it is being confirmed in the display certifications. You could see iPhone 12 pops up with the 120Hz display. So iOS 14 is going to work super smooth with the Pro phones. That's actually going to be something interesting to look at. And that's it for today's episode of Tech Nerds. Now guys, again, I did not mean to go off and just do this. This is a long video, I understand. But please, be willing to understand my perspective, my understanding, and where I'm coming from. I'm not trying to make you hate Apple. I'm not trying to divide you. Just understand my perspective. Now again, if you like what I had to say, you can hit that like button. If you dislike what I had to say, you could hit that dislike button. It doesn't matter. That's it for the video. Thank you for all for watching. Take care, everybody. I will see you all tomorrow with final updates and everything you need to know in the tech world. I'll be back on the grind. That's all. Take care and peace.